I'm Tom and I make round windows for a living. Join me in my little workshop in rural Portugal as I make one of the most challenging and expensive pieces I have made to date. During this build I had a few extra requirements from the client due to the location of his home. This wasn't going to be a regular casement window. It needed to be able to resist extreme maritime wind and rain. The client lives on a Canadian archipelago. The client paid a lot of money for this window, so it has to be just right. Later on I will reveal how much he paid. It is just a window, but making one like this takes weeks of work. And with the added features to make this fit for extreme wind and rain, there's a good chance I will end up going over schedule. So join me for a truly unique window build right from my little workshop in the countryside. The weather at the client's home couldn't be more different from the weather here now while I make this window. I'm in the Mediterranean during summer, which means 40 centigrade, 100 Fahrenheit temperatures and 20% humidity. This window will go to an archipelago in Canada, which means horizontal rains and extreme high winds with high humidity. Not only does the heat and low humidity here add some difficulties to the build, but I have to account for the expansion of the window when it arrives in its new home. But more about that later. In this video I have some breakages that need rectifying. I made a few mistakes that set me back a few days, and I have 6 weeks to make this window, which I assumed would be more than enough time, but it wasn't. So let's get started. First up, I need to make and cut the circles for the windows. The outer frame is a full circle and the sash has 2 straight sides and 2 curved sides. Now I only make round windows, so I'm used to making circles, which is probably why I made the sash by making a full circle, then cutting it into pieces. It wasn't until my teacher laughed at me for doing this that I realised I could probably just make the curved sections from a block of wood, cut with a bandsaw. But I just feel that my method of cutting with a circle with a router is much more accurate than freehanding it with a bandsaw. So I'm just going to carry on doing it this way. I guess the issue of doing it my way is that I put a lot of time into making these segmented circles, so if the radius isn't perfect to fit inside the frame, then it's a lot of wasted time. So maybe next time I will try cutting the sash rails from a solid piece of wood and save myself some time. Now I have my round sections, I need to make the straight pieces. For this I need more than the hand tools that I have in my workshop, so I take a trip to a workshop that I rent where I can use the jointer, thicknesser and the other workshop tools. So I drive about an hour to this workshop with only the pieces I need to thickness and straighten, and it turns out that was a mistake. I used to make spares for everything. Literally when someone ordered a window I would make 2, just in case one part got messed up, so I would have spares and send the order out on time still. But in the end I wasn't making many mistakes, and now I have loads of spare windows and parts that I still haven't yet sold or used. And they're taking up space. So a few months ago I stopped making spares. But today I regretted that decision. I drove an hour to this workshop, milled 3 of the 4 straight sections down to size, and on number 4, obviously not focusing on what I was doing, I put the piece through the thicknesser the wrong way round and cut it way too thin. So there was no way I could save this. So I had to go home, laminate a new piece and try again the next day. But I guess today was the day I was supposed to be doing this joinery. So I started again. This part of the window is the highest pressure. In fact, of all the windows I make, this joinery is by far the most difficult thing to do. So let's get into it. I have my straight sections and So now I need to make the curved sections from the sash, which I cut out of the circle. Once I have them, I need to cut my straight parts using the life-size drawing I have as a guide. Now that I have the parts cut to size and shape, I can use the mortising machine to cut the joinery. This machine makes life so easy. Not quite easy enough though, as it's still possible to make mistakes, as we will see in a minute. I clamp the pieces in, and using the horizontal drill to hog out the material from both the mortises and the tenons. This machine is really easy to use and it is very accurate. Beats cutting by hand anyway. I use a saw and a chisel to remove the parts which the mortising machine can't reach, and that is the joinery done. So now is the moment of truth. Does it actually fit? Surely with this amazing mortising machine that is so accurate and easy to use, it all must fit perfectly. Well, no. Once again, I have small gaps along my shoulders, so I grab the pull saw and slowly cut away the gap from the other side and bring those joints in nice and tight. It's going to take a bit of sanding to get this window nice and flat, but so far we are looking pretty good. And most importantly, it still fits nicely inside the frame with good gap tolerance around the curved parts. The next day I'm at home and it's glue up time. This is where things can go really wrong with this window. Glue up is generally a high pressure process, especially when it's 40 degrees centigrade, 100 Fahrenheit, 20% humidity, and I'm working with a water-based glue. The glue dries especially quickly, so as soon as I start the gluing process, the clock starts ticking, and I need to get it done as quickly as possible. So I apply the glue as quickly as I can. I try to do this in a clean and tidy manner, but of course the glue ends up everywhere, including the joints. Then I assemble the sash. I have the technical drawing of the sash on the table in front of me with some wooden blocks to make sure everything is in its place. So when the glue is applied and everything together, I have to bash the sash with a wooden mallet to make sure it's in the right shape and that it will still sit nicely inside the frame. Next day I can cut all the excess and sand the sash to its final shape. These are some of the most satisfying parts of the build. Seeing the sash emerge from a gluey mess is really gratifying. But I don't have time to enjoy that high right now, because next is the more difficult joinery part of this window. It is technically just a half lap, but it's by far the most complicated half lap I have ever seen. It sports a 2-tier half lap with funny notches on the recess and a curved shoulder. I'll be cutting this all by hand. At this point, my procrastinating mind tells me, hold on, you can delay this by another day if you do the bent laminations first. But seriously, the bent laminations are easier to do now, that way I can use the frame as a form. For this window, I am making 2 rain drips, which I haven't made for this type of window before. But due to the mega rains it's going to see, I feel it's important to add rain drips above and below the window. I'm about to commit a carpentry crime, and that is using my frame as a form to make bent laminations. But in my opinion, making a custom form to make a one-off bent lamination is time consuming and wasteful. So I use tin foil to protect the frame and I get on with it. If using my frame as a bent lamination form bothered you, I might advise looking away for the next few minutes. In order to thickness my bent laminations, I need to commit further crimes. I clamp the bent lamination to the frame and use a stubby flush trim bit to flatten both sides. Now this, in my opinion, is much higher risk than using a frame as a gluing mould. as any mistakes can damage my actual frame, and with a router mistakes can be pretty serious. So in future I'll be sure to invest in a planer and thicknesser, which will get this job done equally well. But while I still make these windows mostly with hand tools, I guess I will just keep living my life on the edge. So that's done. Oh, and I make my curved beads at the same time using this method. If you want to see a bit more of the process, then episode 5 of my Day in the Life of a Carpenter series covers the bent laminations and the break that I had to fix while making them. And now back to the complicated half laps. I have nothing more to procrastinate about, so I guess I will continue. I have to cut this half lap in 3 parts to make sure it fits. First I cut the notches from the frame. These are fairly simple. I cut them with a handsaw and chisel this time, but while finishing the bases with a router I realised it would have been much easier and cleaner to just do the whole thing with a router. So that's what I'll do next time. Then I can push the style into the newly created recesses and marked on the curved shoulder onto the style. I cut that also with a handsaw and a chisel, and then I used a curved guide to finish the curved shoulder with a chisel. This is a nice technique I learned from watching Dusty Lumber Co. videos. Once that shoulder is cut in, I can push the style slightly further and mark on the awkward recess cuts. These are by far the most difficult to make perfect, so I slowly cut and chisel them out until they fit just right. Then another slightly stressful glue up, which just requires smashing the pieces together with a wooden hammer. And we're approaching the finish line. Oh! Hi, yeah, we're here. It's finished. Look at that. Without a doubt, my best work to date. Really happy with this one. This window cost the client around $2,000. Let me know in the comments what you think of that. What would you do differently? Just tell me what's on your mind. Until next time, thank you very much.